Hey Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
This rookie is James Garrison, who got my headphones back. Hooray! Thanks, James. And this other rookie is Todd Lagasse. I wonder how he'll do. And this other rookie is Tristan Engas, who is the number 789. And this other rookie is Shane Gears. And we have yet another rookie who's called Leo Carnell. But we have yet another rookie of Ryan Rodages, who is the number 97. And Joe Rixey is another new rookie, who is the number 13. And we have Mika Powell in the number 44 Hot Wheels car. And this other rookie is Kyle Breaks in the number 17. And we have yet another rookie, Mark Outerbreaks, and number 86, Trevor Turnrev. I hope he doesn't wreck cars. And we have this other rookie called Callum Hunter. And we have yet another rookie, Ronald Clutcher, who is Ray's brother. And we also have Adam Fuelspin and Ryan Revster, who is the final rookie that I will mention. And now into the new looks, where Jay Corner is now going full-time this season with his new look. Other cars with new looks are Denny Carlin, Kevin Carvick, Kurt Buschtire, Casey Corner, Brad Karslowski, Mike Yankee Jr., Joey Lagirno, David Gillicar, David Raycar, Bobby Carboni, Casey Gears, David Stremrim, Michael McDrivewell, Michael Cartrip, Mike Splatlopper, Elijah Voltson, Bogart Hopscotch, Eon Evenair, Edwin Burnout, Slate Granger, Paul Racedraft, Ivan Ovtovsky, and Kenny Wheelhouse. Oh wow, Matt Karsith is not on that list. Now, for the new racers that are not rookies, we have Trevor Blowlane and Donnie Wilson, who is a backup racer to Floyd Mulvihill. And here's the list of all the part-time racers. There's about 40 of them in total. Wow, that is quite a lot of part-time racers. Now, on to the next part. Nobody that we know of yet is retiring this season. Hooray! Eric Carmarola, Elliot Draftler, Mike Wheelhouse, Sam Carnish Jr., Jack Fenders, Louis Zatlap, and Stella Revrider are all moving down to the second division this season. And here is the list of race teams participating in the 2011 Piston Cup season. And here is the list of all the racers racing in the 2011 Piston Cup season. That's quite a lot of racers. And here is even more. They are categorized by their number. And that's a lot of racers that are racing in the 2011 Piston Cup season. By the way, you're probably wondering how many racers it is. 175 cars will be racing in the 2011 Piston Cup season, with 40 part-timers. And we're not done yet, because these cars might participate in the 2011 Piston Cup season. Now, let's get on to the starting grid. Dale Earnhardt Jr. will start at pole position for the 2011 Florida 500, with the defending champion Lightning McQueen to his outside. And now on to row 2, where Kurt Buschtire will start alongside Jeff Burton the Jumper to his outside. Row 3 has Cal Weathers, the 2008 Piston Cup champion, and Clint Bokar to his outside. Row 4 has Kevin Carvick and Michael Cartrip, both of which have new looks. Row 5 has Matt Karsith, who surprisingly doesn't have a new look, and Kyle Buschtire to his outside. Row 6 has Casey Corner and Murray Clutchburn starting to his outside. Row 7 has the Chip Carnassi Racing teammates Juan Pablo Montoya and Jamie McCarry to his outside. Row 8 has AJ Carmeninger and Brad Karslowski in his first race in the number 2. Row 9 has Mark Carton and Danny Carlin to his outside. Both did quite well in 2009. Row 10 has Bobby Swift and Martin Carrix Jr. Row 11 has Ryan Newcar, the Rocket, and Carl Edwards to his outside. Row 12 has TG Castlenut and David Rudikar. I hope they'll do well this race. Row 13 has Tony Gaswart and Greg Beeple. Both have been in the Piston Cup for a little while. Row 14 has Brian Vickars, who is back from his season-ending crash from last season, and Paul Racedraft. Row 15 has Bill Racelot. Somehow he's still going, and Brick Yardley. Row 16 has Mike Yankee Jr. and Speedy Comet, who has been speedy in practice. Row 17 has Trevor Blowlane and David Raycar. I wonder how they'll do this race. Row 18 has Jimmy Cables and Ernie Gearson, who has been racing since before Jimmy was even born. Row 19 has Doug Throttleman, another jumper, and Joey Lagirno, the mean orange car. Row 20 has Phil Tankson and Todd Marcus. I wonder how they'll do this race. And row 21 has Brick Hicks and Reb Meeker. And who starts in 43rd? That car is Chip Gearings, who qualified for all 36 races last season. Unfortunately, all of these cars failed to qualify for this race. Rex Revler and Jack DePost failed to qualify for this race. Todd Lagasse failed to qualify for this race. James Garrison, my friend, failed to qualify for this race. But yet, who finished 44th? Chick Hicks! Good thing he failed to qualify, and he protested the results! Being a former Piston Cup champion does not guarantee you a spot in every race. And also, don't say that word! Now onto the race. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would lead for just one lap before Kurt Busch-Tire would take the lead from him later in the lap. But then, Kevin Harvick would take the lead from Kurt Busch-Tire and lead the field into the second lap. But Kurt Busch-Tire would be back in the lead, leading the field into the third lap, where Lightning McQueen would take the lead from himself, leading until lap 5, where Kevin Harvick would retake the lead, leading 3 more laps before AJ Carmendinger would take the lead from him. He would lead until lap 9, where Cal Weathers would take the lead from him. He would lead for 2 laps, but unfortunately, Todd Marcus would be out on lap 10 because of an engine failure. AJ Carmendinger would take the lead after the restart and lead into the next lap, lap 12, before Brad Keselowski would take the lead from him. He would lead for 4 laps before Mike Yankee Jr. would take the lead from himself, leading until lap 17, where Cal Weathers would retake the lead. He would lead for 1 more lap before he'd lose the lead to Paul Racedraft of all cars. And he would lead until lap 21, where Juan Pablo Montoya would take the lead from him. He would lead for 2 laps, but in the meantime, Kevin Harvick would be out on lap 22 because he spun out. Clint Bokar would take the lead on lap 23 and lead for 5 laps before Kurt Busch-Tire would be 8th as of lap 28, where he wrecks Murray Clutchburn and Michael Cartrip. Why? And Craig Shiftwright had something to say about that despite being Kurt's boss. And Jamie McCarty would take the lead after the restart and lead until lap 36, where Paul Racedraft would once again take the lead. He would lead for the next 4 laps before Brad Keselowski would take the lead from him, leading for 5 laps. But Chip Gearings would be out on lap 45 because of an engine failure, unfortunately. And Phil Tankson would take the lead after the restart, leading until lap 51, where Kurt Busch-Tire would take the lead once again, leading into the next lap. But on lap 52, Paul Racedraft would take the lead once again. And the very next lap, Clint Bokar would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 57. But Bobby Swift would take the lead for himself off of pit cycles on lap 57. But Juan Pablo Montoya would take the lead on lap 58, leading for 2 more laps before Kurt Busch-Tire would be back in the lead for 6 more laps before Jeff Burton would jump over him and lead for 2 laps himself. And then Lightning McQueen, the defending champion, would take the lead and lead until lap 72, where Clint Bokar would pass him on the inside. 2 laps later, Cal Weathers would take the lead once again and lead until lap 75, where Jeff Burnton would take the lead for himself, but not by jumping. Then on lap 77, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would retake the lead, leading for 3 more laps before Jamie McCarry would take the lead once again, leading for 2 more laps, but Speedy Comet would be 23rd as of lap 82, where he wrecks Jimmy Cables. Right, and Jimmy Cables had this to say to Speedy Comet, and Speedy Comet replies, "I don't really get it. I thought I had room to pass him." And then Ryan Newcar would take the lead after the restart and lead for 3 laps before Martin Carx Jr. would take the lead from him. He would lead for 2 laps before Clint Bokar would take the lead from him, leading for 2 more laps, but Kurt Busch-Tire would take the lead once again, leading for the next 7 laps, and Jeff Burnton would be out on lap 92 because one of his jumps went wrong. And Ryan Newcar would take the lead once again. But Lightning McQueen would take the lead later in the lap. But guess who jumps? Doug Throttleman would jump to take the lead on lap 97, but the very next lap, Brick Yardley would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 laps before Martin Carx Jr. would take the lead on lap 100. But then Jamie McCarry would take the lead for himself on lap 101. Then the Rocket, Ryan Newcar, would rocket back up to the front and lead until lap 105, where Brick Yardley would retake the lead on lap 106 and lead for the next 5 laps before Kurt Busch-Tire would say this. Why? And then he takes the lead on lap 111. And then on lap 111, later that lap, Clint Bokar would retake the lead, leading for 2 more laps before, of course, Kurt Busch-Tire retakes the lead for just 2 laps before Clint Bokar would repass him for the lead, leading for 2 more laps before Kurt Busch-Tire would once again take the lead. He would lead until Martin Carx Jr. would take the lead on lap 116, and then he would lead until lap 118, where Kurt Busch-Tire would once again take the lead, and then Paul Racedraft would take the lead for himself, leading for 3 more laps before Kurt's younger brother Kyle would take the lead for himself, leading on lap 121. But the very next lap, on lap 122, Martin Carx Jr. would be back in the lead. But on lap 123, Kyle Busch-Tire would be back in the lead. And then Martin Carx Jr. is back in the lead, leading on lap 124. And then Kyle Busch-Tire takes the lead later that lap to lead into lap 125. Then after turn 1 of lap 125, Martin Carx Jr. would take the lead and lead for 4 laps. In the meantime, Greg Beeple would be out on lap 126 because of engine failure. On lap 129, Clint Bokar would take the lead once again. Then the very next lap, Martin Carx Jr. would retake the lead, leading for 2 more laps before Clint Bokar would once again take the lead and lead for 10 whole laps before Martin Carx Jr. would once again retake the lead, leading until lap 146. Then Kurt Busch-Tire would be back in the lead, leading all the way until lap 148. But then Dale Earnhardt Jr. would take the lead for himself and lead for 4 laps before Kyle Busch-Tire would be 6th as of lap 152. Where he wrecks Matt Karzif, Doug Throttleman, and Reb Meeker. Why, you mean yellow car? And Lightning McQueen would take the lead after the restart. But Ryan Newcar would take the lead off of pit road. But on lap 160, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would retake the lead. Then Ryan Newcar would retake the lead later that lap and lead all the way until lap 163, where Denny Carlin would take the lead for himself, leading for 7 laps before Cal Weathers would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 171, where Ryan Newcar, the Rocket, would once again take the lead, leading for 4 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again, leading for 2 laps before David Raycar would take the lead in this race for the first time, leading until lap 177, where Clint Bokar would take the lead once again, leading for 2 more laps before Ryan Newcar would take the lead once again, leading for 2 more laps before Clint Bokar would take the lead once again on lap 181. Then Ryan Newcar would take the lead the very next lap and lead for the next 10 laps before Clint Bokar, of course, would retake the lead, leading for 2 more laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead once again, leading for 3 more laps before David Raycar would take the lead. He would lead for 5 laps before Carl Edwards would take the lead for himself, leading for 4 laps before David Raycar, his teammate, would retake the lead, leading until lap 210. But then, Kurt Busch-Tire would be back in the lead, leading for 8 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again, leading for 6 laps. In the meantime, Kyle Busch-Tire would be third as of lap 218, where he wrecks Brian Vickers and David Rudekar. Why, you mean yellow car? And Cal Weathers would take the lead on lap 224. Then 3 laps later, Bobby Swift would take the lead for himself, leading all the way until lap 248, where Speedy Comet would be 27th as of that lap, where he accidentally wrecks Brad Keselowski. Why? Cal Weathers would take the lead after the restart and lead until lap 254, where Clint Bowcar would once again be in the lead. And he would lead for 4 more laps before Martin Carx Jr. would once again retake the lead, leading until lap 261, where the Rocket Ryan Newcar would once again take the lead, leading for just 2 laps before Dale Earnhardt Jr. would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 more laps before Carl Edwards would go on and lead 4 laps. Then on lap 268, Denny Carlin would retake the lead, leading for 2 more laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead for himself, leading for 8 laps before Bill Racelot would surprisingly take the lead, leading until lap 278, where Cal Weathers would once again take the lead, leading all the way until lap 279, where Kurt Busch-Tire would then bump him out of the way and take the lead. Then on lap 284, Kurt Busch-Tire, who is in the lead, wrecks. Why would you wreck someone while you're in the lead? He wrecked Lightning McQueen, T.G. Castlenut, and Brick Hicks. Why, you mean car? And Craig Shiftwright once again has something to say. At least he's telling Kurt Busch-Tire not to wreck other cars. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would take the lead after the restart and lead for 4 laps, but unfortunately, Casey Corner would be out on lap 289 because of an engine failure. And then David Raycar would take the lead after the restart, leading for 6 laps before Brick Yardley would once again take the lead, leading for 10 laps before Cal Weathers would once again take the lead, leading for 3 laps before the Rocket Ryan Newcar would rocket back up to the front, leading for 2 laps before Carl Edwards would take the lead for himself, leading for 4 more laps before Dale Earnhardt Jr. would be back in the lead, leading for 7 more laps before Kurt Busch-Tire would be second as of lap 322, where he wrecks Dale Earnhardt Jr. Why, Kurt Busch-Tire? But the appropriate response is given by the fans, who all began to boo Kurt Busch-Tire, and Paul Racedraft would take the lead after the restart. And then the very next lap, Kurt Busch-Tire would be back in the lead, leading for 5 laps before Phil Tankson would take the lead away from him, leading all the way until lap 335. But then Cal Weathers would take the lead for himself once again, leading for 3 more laps before Martin Carx Jr. would once again take the lead, leading for 2 laps before Juan Pablo Montoya would once again retake the lead for himself, leading until lap 343, where Kyle Busch-Tire, the mean yellow car, would take the lead for himself, and then his teammate Denny Carlin would go down a lap on lap 344. Then, also on lap 344, Carl Edwards would retake the lead, leading until lap 346, where Cal Weathers would once again take the lead, leading until lap 350, where Speedy Comet would take the lead, and then lose the lead the very next lap to Martin Carx Jr., who would then lead for 4 more laps, but then David Raycar would take the lead for himself, leading for 3 laps before Phil Tankson would take the lead for himself, leading for 9 laps, but then David Raycar would retake the lead, leading for just 2 laps this time, before Brick Yardley would take the lead for himself, leading for 4 more laps, but unfortunately, Ryan Newcar would go down a lap on lap 372, and also, Phil Tankson would be 18th as of lap 372, where he wrecks Joey Logano, the mean orange car. He didn't wreck anyone else this race, but Cal Weathers would take the lead after the restart and lead for 2 more laps before Kurt Busch-Tire would take the lead for himself, leading until lap 381, where Cal Weathers would once again take the lead, leading for 3 more laps yet again. Then Bobby Swift would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 laps before Phil Tankson would take the lead for himself, leading all the way until lap 393, where Cal Weathers would take the lead for himself once again, leading for 5 laps. But Ernie Gearson would somehow take the lead and then lose it on lap 399 to Cal Weathers, who would lead until lap 402, losing the lead to Brick Yardley, who would lead for 2 more laps before Phil Tankson would take the lead for himself once again. But on lap 407, Kurt Busch-Tire would be back in the lead. But 4 laps later, Bobby Swift would take the lead from him. And then, as usual, Kurt Busch-Tire would be second as of lap 412. And then he wrecks Bobby Swift. Why? Cal Weathers would take the lead after the restart once again, and then lead for 3 laps before David Raycar would take the lead for himself, leading for 3 laps before Phil Tankson would be back in the lead once again, leading for 3 laps before Carl Edwards would take the lead once again, leading until lap 424. Ryan Newcar would unfortunately go down a second lap on lap 424. Jamie McCarry would take the lead on lap 424 and lead the next lap, but then on lap 425, Cal Weathers would take the lead. Later that lap, Bill Racelot would be back in the lead. But 50 yards later, Kurt Busch-Tire would be back in the lead for 75 yards before Brick Yardley would once again take the lead, leading until lap 426, where Carl Edwards would once again take the lead. He would lead for 4 laps before AJ Carmeninger would be back in the lead once again, leading until lap 431, where Carl Edwards would once again retake the lead, leading for 2 more laps before his teammate David Raycar would take the lead from him. But then, a few laps later, on lap 437, Clint Bokar would be back in the lead. 2 laps later, another yellow car, the mean yellow car, Kyle Busch-Tire would retake the lead. But on lap 440, Brick Yardley would retake the lead, leading for 2 more laps before Phil Tankson would take the lead once again. But then, on lap 446, Cal Weathers would retake the lead. Then Cal Weathers would lose the lead on lap 449 off of pit cycles to David Raycar, who would lead all the way until lap 451, where Cal Weathers would retake the lead, leading for 4 more laps before Phil Tankson would once again take the lead, leading until lap 458. But then Kurt Busch-Tire, the mean car of the day, would take the lead once again. But on lap 459, Cal Weathers would take the lead, leading for 20 whole laps before Mike Yankee Jr. would take the lead once again, leading until lap 480. But then Phil Tankson would take the lead once again, leading until lap 487, where Ernie Gearson would take the lead for himself, leading for 2 laps before David Raycar would take the lead on lap 489. But on lap 493, Phil Tankson would take the lead and lead for the next 6 laps. But then Trevor Blowling would take the lead for the first time and take the white flag. But off of turn 3, Cal Weathers would take the lead, and then he would win the 2011 Florida 500, winning the Florida 500 just like his uncle, the King. Carl Edwards would finish second this race, Phil Tankson third, Brick Yardley fourth, and Kurt Busch-Tire would round out the top 5. And here is the top 20 of the race, with Juan Pablo Montoya, Trevor Blowlane, Kyle Busch-Tire, Paul Racedraft, and Mark Carton, who had no laps, rounding out the top 10, with AJ Carmeninger just missing out, and Bill Racelot somehow finishing 12th. And this is basically the top 20, and Martin Karks Jr. finished 20th. And here is the rest of the field, who are all out or laps down. That's right, you saw it right. Lightning McQueen got a DNF, something you did not see for all of last season. I would feel bad for Todd Marcus. He only got to race for 10 laps. And since the entire bottom half of the field wrecked out or were laps down, Martin Karks Jr. was the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 20th. I know this chart would be useless right now because the Florida 500 is the first race of the season, but here is the top 20 in points. Just in case if you missed it earlier in the video. And somehow, there are 2 part-timers in the top 20.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Good thing Chuck Hicks failed to qualify for this race because he would have done everything Kurt Busch-Tire did this race, but worse. Even though Chick Hicks protested, good thing the Piston Cup did not listen. And why was Kurt Busch-Tire being so mean? And also, the next part of the 2011 Piston Cup season will be coming out soon enough. But it should hopefully not take 3 months to come out. Something that should have ended more than 3 months ago is the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine that has now been going on for over 1 year. The Ukrainian people deserve to live in peace and have freedom. But who stands in the way of this common dream? The tyrant and bully, Vladimir Putin. Why would you start this war against Ukraine? You already have enough land of your own. Did you forget that Russia is the biggest country in the entire world? And the Ukrainian people do not deserve a war being set upon their land. No one does. We at the hashtag KABullets YouTube channel will continue to stand with Ukraine against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. And we also recognize the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine, which are shown on this map. Slava Ukrainie, Heroyam Slava! Nechai Shvitya Daryitsie, Ukrainie Permoha! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes! May Ukraine be granted victory very soon. Perhaps sooner than the upload of my next YouTube video.